Good afternoon and welcome to the 30th episode in IWFM's Navigating Turbulent Times series. Today we are focusing on the new FM social value framework we are due to launch on Friday, and this new national TOMS FM plugin has been developed in partnership with the National Social Value Task Force and the Social Value Portal. My name is Sophie Hooper. I'm the head of policy at IWFM and I will be your host for today. So how did we get to today? You may know that at IWFM, our Sustainability Special Interest Group have been tracking and evaluating sustainability for 13 years now. And we do this for two reasons. One, as a professional body, we need to make sure we understand the trends and challenges our members are navigating. And two, we need to make sure that we look for solutions to support our members to deliver best practice so that we can create positive impacts, not just for our members, but the wider profession and society at large. Social value really showed up as a recognisable trend in the 2016 sustainability survey and is our representative from the Sustainability SIG. And the topic has really continued to feature heavily in each of our surveys from there on. There are kind of two key learnings from the survey, or should I say that the respondents identified two key barriers to driving social value forward. And that is one, there's a lack of a common definition, and two, the lack of a standard set of financial and non-financial metrics that could be used as a benchmark. So following on from the results of the 2018 survey, we were looking for an expert partner to help us in establishing a framework that would meet our members' needs. And it's no surprise to anyone on this webinar that we found that in Guy and the Social Value Portal and the wider National Social Value Task Force. So after 18 months, and with the help and support of a steering group and the National Social Value Task Force and several public consultations, we have arrived at the framework. It's got supporting guidance. It will be incorporated in a calculator, and Guy will tell more about that a little bit later. And it will be published on Friday and will be available for downloading from both IWFM's and the Social Value Portal's websites. So I am joined by four fabulous guests, and I've had the pleasure of working with most of them for the last few years. And together we will explore some key questions in this area so that listeners will walk away hopefully with a greater insight and also hopefully some tools on how to drive social value throughout their organisations and workplace and FM provision. Before I let the panel introduce themselves, I just want to go through our agenda for today. We'll start with a presentation on the new framework, and the slides will be available afterwards. There will be a few polls in the presentation, and then we'll move on to the panel's experiences with social value, the challenges they've experienced, and the rewards and outcomes and impacts they've achieved. And I also wanted to call on the audience actually to start submitting questions, as we will have about 20 minutes Q&A session after that initial panel discussion. So Guy, may I please ask you to briefly introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Guy Batten. I'm the Chief Executive of Social Value Portal. We also provide as a business, the Secretariat services to the National Social Value Task Force, and I'll be leading the presentation just after the introductions. Thank you, Sophie.
Hello, I'm Anne Beavis, Head of Sustainable Development for Crown Workspace. I support them in developing their own sustainable and circular services, as well as internally our own sustainability and social value strategy. I've been a member of the IWFM Sustainability SIG for I think 4 or 5 years now, and work closely with Sophie and the others, in particular in relation to social value. So very pleased to be here today.
Thank you. And Carly?
Hello, I am Carly Bright and I am the General Manager of 245 Hammersmith Road. And that is a fund managed by BNP PRE Services on behalf of Legal & General and Mitsubishi. I was brought on to mobilise, manage the building, offer customer service and deliver social value.
Great, thank you for that introduction. Patrick?
Hi everybody, my name is Patrick O'Farrell and I'm the Head of FM at Nationwide Building Society. Nationwide is an organisation that was founded in 1846 on a social purpose, and its commitment to supporting its members and the society we all live in hasn't really changed in all that time. It's those values that attracted me to the society many years ago, and if anything, those values and that belief in doing the right thing has strengthened over the last few years. Now, whether that be the society's role in supporting the Diana Award partnership with its anti-bullying campaign, or its role in as a principal partner of the Living Wage Foundation, or supporting social enterprise sector. So many things. And so getting involved with the IWFM and the social value portal to help develop and tailor an FM specific social value framework was perhaps one of the easier decisions I've made in recent years. I hope you enjoy the next hour.
Thank you, Patrick. So, Guy, it's over to you. You should be in control of the slides, and we'll be back on camera after the presentation.
Fantastic. Well, thanks everybody for that sort of tee up and introduction. So first off, whilst I sort of lead the business, the hard work has been delivered by one of my colleagues in the business, Philip Cyrus, who's a senior researcher with the portal and has been doing a lot of work around the TOMs and helping manage the various workshops we've got going. Before we kick off, I thought it'd be quite interesting to do a poll. So we've got, I think, 3 or 4 poll questions just to get a sense of where people are at, and then we might pick this up during the discussion. So, whoops. Do you want to just bring the poll questions up? So they'll last for 20 seconds each. So the first question: how important will social value be to your business going forward? So that's a forward-thinking thing. High, medium, low. And then the second, are we going to see the answers straight away or after? Yeah, okay. So that's great. So high or medium, that's good. I hope that everyone by the end of this will consider it sort of a high importance, but we'll pick that up during the discussion. It'd be quite interesting to hear from people why they think it's medium importance, and we can pick that up. Next question. So where are you on your journey of embedding social value into your organization, it should say? So some of you won't have started yet and have just joined because you're interested in social value, just heard about it. Some of you will be just starting out. I guess some of you might be well on your way, and then of course 1 or 2 of you might be doing, across everything that you do. So it'd be interesting to hear where you are on your journey effectively. Okay, that's good. So there's quite a few of you sort of beginning to start work on it. That's very good. And so we've got some experts in the audience. It's great. Okay, next question. Are you being asked about social value by your customers? So often a business will do it because they think it's the right thing, and then really get serious when your customers start asking for it. It'd be quite interesting to know which of you have been asked by your customers, whether that's not very often, yes sometimes, or yes all the time. Gives us a sort of a taster about what the market is asking for. And it'd be quite interesting to get people just to put some chats about what they are doing. So not often, it's just starting, yes sometimes, yes all the time. There's still 10% of you, 12% of you are. You must do quite a lot of work with the public sector. So that's going to be interesting to pick that up in the discussion. And I think there's one more question, is that right?
No, the last question will be later, Guy.
Oh, the last question will be later, fine. Okay, so if we go back to the presentation, then I will take over. Great. Okay, fantastic. So just a bit about my business. So we've developed an online solution for helping organizations measure their social value. It also is a procurement platform and a contract management platform. But what's important about this slide is it's not our customers as such. It's the fact we work with the public and private sector, and so we have a unique position in as much that we get to see what the buyers are asking for, and then we also get to see and work with those who are looking to submit, social value being that core issue that we're looking at. And I think it's worth, as we dive into this, because some of you are just starting out, going back to the beginning. All started with the Public Services Social Value Act that was first published in 2012, was implemented in 2013, and it requires all local public sector organisations to consider social value, defined as economic, social and environmental wellbeing, in their tenders. Interesting enough, and actually very importantly, just in September and then more recently just yesterday, with an update note, the central government came out, who've been sort of slow to the party, if you like, with their own policy, procurement policy note, making it very clear that all central government organisations now have to take into account social value and explicitly evaluate it in all of their procurement. The Social Value Act has without doubt transformed the relationship between the public and private sector. I think this central government act or direction is very much a game changer that will just add massive momentum on what we're seeing already, which is still not grip of the controls. So how are organisations, in particular governments, applying the Act? Well, generally it's being embedded into all purchasing and procurement around goods, works, services, and also capital projects. It's generally above O2 threshold, so that's the European threshold. What's interesting about this is that where it is being used, it's being identified as a standalone weighting of usually 10 or 15%, although Manchester in January is just about to go up to 30%. And now what that means is that unless you have a really good social value solution, you're not going to win work with Manchester in the future. And what's interesting about this is that private sector organisations are now adopting the principles of the Act. They're not bound by the Act at any level, but they are adopting the principles of the Act. So let's just think about how we measure social value, diving straight into it, which cuts to the core of what the measurement framework is about. So we're obviously interested in jobs. So let's just imagine for a moment we're collecting the information around new jobs created and local jobs, and everyone will get a salary on that. But let's assume that job goes to two different people. On the one hand, someone with a good CV. On the other hand, someone who's come from a troubled family, perhaps with a criminal record. Now, there's two different values on this. The value related to someone with a CV, actually it's only their salary that will add value to the local community. But if that same job goes to, let's say, a young offender, someone who's been troubled with the police, and they effectively stay in work rather than reoffending, then that could be worth as much as £23,000. And that's made up of fiscal saving from the Ministry of Justice, the police, the courts, the prison services, of course, but also the fact they have money that they wouldn't have had to spend locally. So there's a real benefit. So we build these up into a framework, and that's called the National TOMS framework. And the TOMS framework is so cool because it's made up of a series of themes, outcomes, and measures. But what's important about the framework, it's based on a series of non-financial data points, but allows you to calculate the total social value based on a series of financial outcomes that are delivered through each measure. So we have 5 themes. So that's jobs and skills, it's supporting local growth, it's supporting healthier communities, it's protecting our environment, and finally social innovation. Every theme has 2 or 3 outcomes. So for instance, more local people in work, vulnerable people are helped to live independently, or air pollution is reduced. We want to measure each of those. So every outcome has a series of measures, 2 or 3 measures. And if we have a measure, we can also have a unit. And so every measure unit is associated with a value. So when it comes to looking at the total social value, using the framework, it's very simply calculated. by the sum of the measures times the values. So this allows us to look at any contract and any activity, look at what you're doing across a range of menu of items to be able to do a calculation. So we've built this into the National TOMS. The National TOMS is a minimum reporting standard. It's been adopted by local government, it's endorsed by local government, and in fact the latest government, central government proposals follow a similar sort of approach. Within the minimum framework, we also have an additional 38 measures. So you have a minimum standard, but additional 30 measures to choose from. But we also recognise that the framework was designed for local government specifically and doesn't necessarily reflect sectors. And so we've developed a real estate plugin, which reflects the reality of all the opportunities around real estate. And of course, today we are talking about the facilities management or workplace and facilities management plugin that adds a few more measures that are specific to the industry and profession that will allow you to measure the social value. So just what's in there, the framework, these are just a few items that are picked up within the framework, the national framework. So, more local people in employment, improved skills, looking to reduce inequalities, cybersecurity risks are reduced, crime is reduced, occupiers more satisfied. It's a whole range of individual outcomes and measures we're looking to achieve with measures and values that allows you to put the sort of calculation of social value on that. So today we see the launch of the National TOMS Facilities Management plugin or workplace and facilities management, as Sophie mentioned at the outset, supported by RWFM, but very much coming under the umbrella of the National Social Value Task Force and also the local government. And it's very much designed to help the profession understand how it can contribute to creating a more fair, equal society. And so the FM plugin has the 5 themes and 24 outcomes from the national framework, but we've then selected 46 core measures from that framework that we think are most relevant to the industry. And the framework can be used for procurement, so you can use it in how you go about buying or selecting your suppliers. It's obviously used for measurement, and if you're measuring it, then you can report it. So it allows you to measure the outcomes, the value of the outcomes. So what you see at the bottom there is a series of, well, I've just picked up one theme. You've got the jobs theme there, you've got a couple of outcomes that we've shown there. You have the measures. Each measure has a unit, and then every unit has a proxy, and then we provide guidance as well. So we're publishing this over 3 documents. In fact, we're going to publish it on Friday, this Friday, so you'll be able to download it from the IWFM and our own website on Friday. So you'll get the guidance, full guidance, as well as the actual methodology for calculating social value from there. And what's important about this framework is that it's transparent, it's replicable, and it's comparable. All really important issues to the industry. And so just a couple of things I want to pull out here. These are the very specific additional measures we've identified with the working group. So we've put something around fair work, we've got something around the COVID crisis, something around air pollution and resource efficiency. So we've added some very specific measures that the task group that we set up thought were important. So these effectively flavour the national TOMS and real estate TOMS to make it more specific for the workplace facilities management profession. What we've also have done for the national TOMS, and we will be doing in due course for the FM TOMS, not quite finished yet, is mapping the national TOMS against the global goals. Some of you would have heard about the UN global goals for sustainable development, and so we've carried out a mapping exercise. So you'll be able, if you use the TOMS, you'll also be able to report the contribution against those global goals, both from a non-financial perspective, but also a financial perspective. So let's just land it in the world of workplace and facilities management, because I've kind of talked sort of fairly high level at the moment. And the way we see social value working in the real estate industry, if you like, is through, you know, a full life cycle, community planning, construction, and then of course where everyone on this call will get involved in property management and occupation. Those two are the key elements. Now, what's really important about this is you understand just how important your role is in unlocking value for our communities. If you take a typical 20-year lifespan of a building and you look at the total social value within that square, it's made up of around about 10, possibly 15% through the construction process. Then you've got around about 10 or 15% through how the site or the facility is managed. So that's, you know, what you do as a profession in your supply chain, in providing security services, landscape services, maintenance, all those sorts of things. But then importantly, a very large 75% provided by the occupiers. So as a workplace and facilities management profession, you actually have influence over two parts of that. So that's the 15% in site management or facilities management, and then the 75% in workplace management with occupiers. So that is the vast majority, that's 90%. So there's a fundamental role that you guys have in unlocking value across the communities. I've already kind of touched on this, but I've just pulled out a few things that, you know, your in-house teams could be doing in terms of, you know, employing local people, prioritizing local businesses to deliver services, targeting diversion to landfill. You might outsource certain elements, so, you know, embed social value into procurement processes, prioritize local spend, and then use social enterprises. And then your organization, you can help unlock sort of jobs for those furthest from the job market, and importantly, promote volunteering in the community. So how might this be applied? So when you get the TOMs, you'll have the themes, the outcomes, or themes and the measures. And what we're looking for you to do is effectively use them to design your own sort of 1 year, 2 year, 3 year set of targets. So you'll have a set of measure, but what we're interested in you identifying not only the need, and this one is about, this mentions schools in this particular one, but actually what we're looking at is which school should your team focus on. And then we're looking for you to set some targets and, you know, what are you going to do? So it might be 6 visits over the year, 2 hours each with 2 people. And then finally, if appropriate, you might also begin to identify community partners. For school visits, you might not need that, but if you're looking for jobs for long-term and unemployed people, you might need a partner in the community. We're working with lots of customers who are already doing this. And if you think about the drivers, Land Securities have committed to delivering £25 million worth of social value across all of their new build and assets over the next 10 years. And so this is really important to the world of property owners. This is a really important quote by Mark Tyson, and with your permission, I'll just read it out, because I think it really, for me, lands it. So Mark says, as a major asset holder with responsibility of managing many billions of pension fund investments, we recognise that delivering more than just a good rate of return is now essential, now an essential part of our real estate investment strategy. As a result, we expect our whole supply chain to engage with this agenda, especially our FM providers who are on the front line of this transformation. And in fact, Carly, who's going to speak later, was selected through this process. So this is now, I mean, Legal & General don't have to do this. They're not public sector, but you can see now it's beginning to happen, and as they recognise their responsibilities. And just by way of an example that Carly will pick up later, this is a terrace she was working on that, you know, could have gone out to an out-of-town contractor, but actually she ended up doing it locally, and she'll tell the story about that and how that's added local value. A project we've done with Legal & General where, you know, part of the offer from the team was to help kit out this big red bus. So the contractors were engaged on the basis that they would also support the local school. And so this is the part of the supply chain offer that the suppliers who won that project then were prepared to get involved in. So there's lots of things you can do. And then this is kind of where you end up with some form of report, that allows you to look at what the building's doing. This happens to be a shopping centre. Allows you to look at what the management team's doing, what the occupiers are doing, and then finally allows you to do some form of report, global goals report. So the framework will allow you to do all of this across your portfolios. And I think this brings me to my last two slides, which are just sort of asking the question: what's the future of the workplace facilities management profession? And I'll just put this out there as a challenge, in as much that, of course, you have your day jobs, which are very important in providing the FM services, high environmental building performance. Those things are kind of a given, I think. But actually, I see the profession now moving towards asking itself, how can we ensure that the occupier that we're supporting actually is engaging with the broader societal challenges that our community, where our building is facing. And this is even more important in a time of COVID. So I think that skill set is now shifting, and we're looking for a reinvention of what the workplace facilities management organisation professional does. And it's about this link, it's about that partnership. And we see the TOMs as being that way of communicating between organisation and community, linking in needs of the community, linking in the opportunities within that organisation, and the workplace professional, a workplace facilities manager sits at the centre of that to unlock that conversation to deliver more value. So ultimately, in this time of COVID, we see this coming to the fore, and we see the National TOM framework as being not only a way of measuring and reporting, but probably even more importantly, some form of manifesto that, to coin a phrase, will help our communities build back better, greener and fairer. Thank you very much, Sophie.
Thank you, Guy. And we are now going to go to the last poll question. Thank you very much. We'll see the response to that very soon.
It's quite a mixture. Good.
That is very interesting indeed. Okay, thank you for that. So thank you, Guy, very much for that very thorough introduction of all the work that we've been doing that hopefully people can use. Before we go into our panel discussion, I just want to remind the audience that please keep the questions coming, because we'll do a Q&A later. As for the panel discussion, and welcome back everyone on camera, I quite like to start off with some of the basic questions, the why, what, how. So as a first question, why did your organisation get involved with delivering social value? Who in the panel would like to pick that one up? And without volunteers.
I'm happy to start, Sophie. So I think, as I said in my opening introduction, it's something that's embedded in our organisation. It's the way we work. And I think what we tried to do over the last few years is embed something that was fairly rudimentary in how we measure social value and social enterprise and our impact. And what this tool now allows us to do, I think Guy used the words transparent and replicable. It gives us a tool that we can actually use and use again and again. So it's fantastic for us, and that's probably why I've got involved.
I think, Sophie, from our perspective, this is just an evolution of a path that the organisation has been on for a while. I've been involved with Crown Workspace for 10 years, and very much as something that started off originally in its previous identity as Premier Workplace Services. That was a family-owned organisation and a small SME in the community. Some of the principles and values already sat there within the DNA of the organisation. Obviously, as time evolved and people want to understand and have a better, stronger solutions around certain themes, having a framework that sort of captures what you're doing, guides what you're doing, and allows you to start to measure and compare. This to me is like a natural evolution from that, and I think it's really helpful. We've been talking in the SIG for a while about, you know, how best to guide the industry with social value and learning from our own practices. So seeing Guy's presentation today, it's a really good opportunity, I think, to sort of really embed the structure that's needed, and it completes a natural journey that many businesses that recognise their purpose sits beyond what they do. It completes that process or helps add some validation, some measurements to that.
Great.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I think on a personal level as well as on a business level, I think Mark touched on that for legal and general. But personally, for somebody who's been doing things like this for the whole of my career as a property management, having that framework where you can actually get a value to what you're doing, like an actual, substantial monetary value, so helpful, and it actually gives more worth to what you're doing because you actually know that you're helping people.
That's very interesting, and for me quite an important part of what you're saying is that quite a lot of that goes around values and the principles that the organisation has. So is that, do you think, very much a precondition to make sure that it falls right, or that it falls?
Well, I think, Sophie, that we're in an industry where it's often quite low margins, and it's actually a very useful tool also to differentiate between different providers. So if you're getting something that's broadly the same price, but in making your selection, you can support your local environment, or you can support others, why wouldn't you?
Mm.
And I think, oh, sorry, Guy, I was just going to jump in. I think it's, you know, you talk about the values. It's very difficult sometimes to demonstrate values beyond, you know, a sample case study or perhaps a story. And it can be frustrating, well, as an organisation, if you do take a holistic approach to this and build up lots of good practice, to try and find a way to differentiate from someone else who's perhaps, you know, another service supplier or operator who's actually is maybe more tokenistic in this area. This is a way of, you know, understanding, you know, where an organisation is and where that commitment is. But I think you would have to have that, you know, to take this agenda seriously and to make it something that sits right across an organisation. You do need to buy in from the top, and then it's got to be part of the sort of culture. Otherwise, you're just looking to tick boxes, and I don't think that this is what this is about at all.
Okay, great. Guy?
Yeah, there is an interesting challenge here, and it goes both sides. So buyers are often worried about when you put social value into procurement that it adds cost, right? And then, you know, suppliers are saying, if we're going to add social value, it's going to cost us more to do. And there's a challenge there. But I mean, we've found actually that for an organisation, a supplier that just tries to add on social value without thinking about it, is going to cost more, without shadow of a doubt. But if you're like, you know, Carly and her team, and you've got it embedded into your organisation already as a value, so it's about how you do what you do as opposed to what, then actually those costs are just absorbed. They're just part of just the way you do business. So ultimately, this leads to a much more ethical, responsible supply chain because all your suppliers are doing it. And I think in the short term, there is no doubt in my mind that social value will differentiate between suppliers, and rightly so, because we want suppliers that, you know, are doing the right thing for our communities.
I think you've hit the nail on the head, really, Guy, especially for 245, because us having social value as part of our tender process really helped to take out the contractors, maybe ones that we don't really want to be working with because they don't have the same values that we do. And also that then on the back foot of that, I got the most fantastic team on my site, because that's what they were taking into consideration, is people have got to have the right personality to want to do good, to want to help people and want to be part of a team. We work as a really one team ethos at 245, and it helps in every aspect. And I think that's what gives us better customer service to our occupiers as well.
And it might be worth, Carly, just saying how you've embedded social value into procurement, what you did with your supply chain, because I think it makes a really good case study of what's possible.
Yeah, so as part of the original tender process, when we were sending out the packs, we put it as a part of, they had to sign up to this, and also it actually falls as a cost to them. So having a monetary value on it, I think also encourages companies to want to strive to do that, to achieve the targets. And then a little bit down the line, obviously we've embedded everybody on site and we've got all that working nicely, but you've got to keep thinking about how you keep embedding it in your procurement. So you touched on it earlier with the 10th floor terrace. My client wanted to do a redeck of the 10th floor terrace to help with the marketing, to be honest. So I said, don't give it to them, because they're going to charge you a lot of money, whereas I could do it a lot cheaper, and we can also incorporate social value. So we then went to the local landscape and forest company, Hammersmith Community Gardens, who are a fantastic charity, and we managed to get them to do the landscaping up there, and they maintain it, and now they also do my internal landscaping. And then we went and contacted a company called Bees and Refugees, because the client wanted some bees on the roof, but we decided to go down the more wild, more ethical route on that, which I was really passionate about, because I didn't want to put any bees up there that were going to suffer. So we actually had a custom built insect hotel with a local charity, Bees and Refugees, and the results are lovely, and people are more engaged with it because it has a story. It's not just we put some stuff on a terrace.
Thank you very much for that. Now, obviously, we've developed this plugin for the FM sector, and some of you work in-house, others might not. But what I'm really interested in is what you can tell about how you helped drive social value within the organisations, helped shape what social value should be looking at. And Patrick, I guess in first instance, I'm looking at you for that, because you've told me quite a bit around that. So really, what is your role as a workplace and FM professional in unlocking that social value piece?
So if I give you a real life example, last week we appointed a new coffee provider, a beverage provider into Nationwide. And the reason I say beverage is when I was explaining to Guy the other day, he thought I said copy, and we looked very confused for a while, but a coffee provider. And what we are able to demonstrate with that is, actually, let me take a step back. A few years ago, we changed coffee provider. We changed coffee provider from one well-known brand to another well-known brand, and it was carnage. We had so much noise, we had so much feedback because people have a preference and what have you. This time we've changed to a social enterprise. And the narrative around the change was that this coffee provider, who is now supporting us, takes homeless people, trains them to be baristas, gives them a job opportunity and a career. And for us, the noise that we might otherwise have received from changing coffee providers is lost in the fantastic story that we're all supporting somebody. So just a really simple example. And actually, by the way, that from a cost point perspective, it's costing no more, no less. Yeah, so it's great.
Thank you.
I mean, that's such a brilliant story, and I think that it just takes in a bit of imagination. You know, sometimes you just kind of go down, I would just switch from one brand to another, but actually it does take a little bit of effort. I mean, Carly, it takes a bit of effort, but the story it brings a smile to your face listening to you, Patrick. I have to say, it's great.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, as we would say, that FM is often the key to unlocking sustainability and social value, because many of the issues that need to be delivered in social value, it lies within your remit to resolve that. And so you have to deliver both from a technological perspective. When I think about healthy buildings, you know, that falls within your remit to make sure that the ventilation, etc., is working properly. There's of course a balance to be had with things like how energy efficient some of that is, etc. But in any way, many of the solutions lie within that remit. Do you think that's sufficiently recognised in organisations?
I'm not sure that.
Oh,
sorry.
There's a slight delay, Carly, but go ahead.
I was going to say, I'm not sure that really that people, when you say social value, I'm not sure that organisations immediately consider environmental and sustainable initiatives to be within that. And that's something that I've been trying to educate people in, is that actually it's not just about how many times you volunteer and do all these lovely charity events, which are so much fun. It's also about what you do in your everyday. So the recycling that you do, we have a demand logic, so how you save energy on your main base build plant. At the moment, we're striving to try and get a carbon reduction drive put into 245, so that hopefully someday we'll become carbon neutral.
And just to build on what Carly's saying, actually, I think that is a really important point, that the environmental side is not necessarily where people go to straight away. But if you look at FM as an industry and the power of the procurement, there's the people side where there's maybe more of an understanding of the natural alignment of social value, employee generation, job creation, apprenticeship. But then that's supported on the environmental side too. When we're obviously working with lots of organisations, particularly at this time with thousands of redundant assets, office furniture and IT, and it's such a particularly at this time when there's going to be a lot of building closures, there's such an opportunity to create social value for those redundant assets right now. But you need to have the right decision-making frame of mind to look beyond the recycling solutions into reuse. I mean, we've got some really advanced clients who put social value above everything else and are talking to us about how to make sure they don't lose those assets, how to make sure they can be remanufactured and refurbished, or how to make sure they can be donated. But capturing the social value of that kind of decision making, making sure those assets that FMs are in charge of are got rid of in the same way as well as being bought in the same way, is a really big opportunity. And also the job creation around that. Reuse creates jobs and it creates skills. When we've moved into the remanufacturing and refurbishment, we've taken some of the team that were originally involved in maybe just clearing a building and putting things in skips, and we've now given them skills such as CNC operation. They've become upholsterers. So there's a skills agenda and a jobs agenda that delivers social value out of the environmental decisions that FM managers and the FM sector get to make.
And I can build on that. When you deal with ethical suppliers, you tend to get access to their network as well. So we're dealing with a furniture organisation, and through them, we had access to a wonderful organisation called Waste to Wonder. And we gave them, Carly, you may know them. You give them some furniture, some chairs, and then a few weeks or months later, you might get pictures showing all of the stuff that you've donated in use in a school in Uganda, for example. And it's just heartwarming. It's lovely, and it solves a problem. Well, I say it solves a problem for you. Your expense of removing all of that furniture disappears, and actually, it's going to a really good use as well. So again, why wouldn't you?
Talking about furniture actually is really interesting, because so where we're also about doing events at 245 and creating like an experience for people, and it's not just for the people inside the building, it's also for the community on the outside. And things like tables obviously are very expensive to buy, but we noticed that loads of these big reels from our fit outs were being thrown away in the skip. So we save loads of them, and we're actually going to upcycle them into tables, so that when we have events, we're actually going to use furniture that was recycled out of the build of some of the floors, which I think is just a bit fun. And also it's something fun for our team to do when they're not so busy. We go and sand down and we paint furniture and stuff. It's just a bit of fun as well.
Great, thank you for that. And you said something about this time around kind of pointing to the current crisis. I had some questions around that, because thinking of the current pandemic, and we've seen some of this trickling through in some of the previous webinars where people are saying all that sudden decisions get made and people kind of think around the Build Back Better type thing, and because of that decisions get made. So do you think really that in this time of crisis, the impact on the role that FM plays in promoting social value, is that getting greater exposure or less, or?
I would say, you know, in my opinion, from what I've seen going on, that we're about to, you know, we've been in panic mode really for the last few months, and I think people are having to, depending on the timeline of the properties and the estates they manage, decisions have been expedited in some terms, and others people are making much shorter term decisions. The clients that we've been working with have changed their plans and changed them again, and to be fair, most of the decision making, I think, in the time that's just gone, has been around the health, safety, well-being, and immediacy of the logistics that people are faced with. I think as we move, you know, what we're seeing for 2021 is that people are starting to maybe extend their decision making away from the 1 month to the 3 months to the 6 months and beyond. And that gives to me, this is why I think this launch is absolutely ideal now, because I think the Build Back Better message has been a massive part of the narrative, but how you actually do that and the enabling and the things that influence the decision making, that's what's needed. So this will help people that want to build back better. We've got a bit of breathing space as we go into the new year, and people can then start to say, right, in a role as FM, I've got this more complex, set of issues, but now there's also some guidance and some measurements that can mean that we can do things differently and we can capture them a different way. So I don't think people, you know, there is that narrative about what's normal and not. I don't think people want to do things the way they've done them before. So this is a great way to give some guidance and to help that focus be on social value.
Thanks, Anne. Carly, floor is yours.
We saw everything that happened as a bit of an opportunity to help people. So we took it and ran with it really. So we found out where the local hospitals were and the local food banks and things like that, and we went and donated toilet rolls, obviously, hand sanitizer, any food, because sometimes you get the freebies from places like the Work Perk. Unfortunately, lockdown happened, we had a load of freebies, so we donated them to a local homeless shelter, so it would go to somebody that would make use of it. And also, in addition to that, we have quite a lot of space at the moment because we're trying to let, but a pandemic is not the best time to be trying to let, so we obviously have quite a few floors. So we spoke to local charities like Mencap, who needed some overflow space because of COVID. They couldn't use the amount of people they needed in their space, was not practical, so we lent them our space. So there was just so many different additional layers of help that we could give people because of a pandemic. And I think people need to always think what you can do, not what you can't do.
That's great. Yes, and kind of wrapping that up, that little section, you know, when Anne also said people are thinking about building back better, there's obviously an enormous drive for the green agenda. I mean, the announcements keep on tumbling out of number 10. We've got the COP near the end of the year. So from our perspective as well, this is a very important year to kind of keep on building on the messages and providing guidance for what we can do in the huge area that this actually covers, both from a economic, social and environmental perspective. Now, we'll get to some of the what you're doing and how that is going to move forward in a little while. You've already touched, all of you, a little bit on the how to drive social value within your organizations. And I would like to explore that a little bit more, because for those people, as part of the audience, they might not necessarily have been driving it through, although quite a few of them were experienced. So what structures, if any, did you set up to enable social value?
Again, I'm happy to go. I mentioned a few moments ago that what we had was reasonably rudimentary up to date, and we actually see this tool, I certainly see this tool as something that we can use to drive even more social value into my organization. Guy said something when we met all those many months ago, and he just repeated it earlier on, and that was that this is more than just a calculator, it's a manifesto for change, and those words really resonate with me.
Okay, ladies. Carly?
Go on, Carly.
Sorry, Anne. For us, it's quite simple. It's not day to day, you know, it is something that we do in everything that we're doing. How can we add an element of social value? So if we're doing an event, we did Sofa Sounds, we got some charity boxes down there for the local homeless shelter, just trying to always add a social element to everything that we do.
I guess the question that I have, and I will get to you in a moment, is that is because the people are already engaged. But before you can get engagement throughout an organisation, is there anything that needs to facilitate that? Is there a certain bit of governance? Do you need input from a board that has got a social value committee or so? Just wondering about that, because I've had questions from members around how to facilitate this. So it's not necessarily dependent on the few people's almost personal outlook to drive this. Anne?
Well, I'm on that journey at the moment. I mean, historically, our measurements have been largely led by as a supplier, we're kind of led by what we're asked to report on. So, for example, in one big area for us, we report on the carbon disclosure programme because many of our clients require us to do so. And that involves a lot of calculations about carbon impacts and our environmental initiatives. From a social perspective, we've had our own rudimentary way of capturing, you know, we donate thousands of items of office furniture and IT equipment every year. We've got nominal financial values that we ourselves have provided. And for the remanufacturing refurbishment, we use other statistics. So we've traditionally reported on financial value of the social support we give to charities and the environmental savings from the remanufacturing, repair, redonation, and then general good news stories and case studies. But I'm at the moment have been going through the process of mapping everything we do against the UN goals. So the plugin has arrived at an absolute ideal time, and I've been looking at, you know, ever since I've been involved in this, I've been looking at the social value portal and what it could do for us. But actually also we're looking at setting a national committee just on all the broader sustainability agenda, and we've got the sort of buy-in from the board, and we recognise the importance of bringing in HR, facilities, compliance and sustainability into one team. But actually recognising that you need the empowered team at the top to set the strategy, but then you need the team of passionate doers to be aligned to that, because there's some big decisions to be made, particularly about if you're looking at things like renewable energy, fleet, transport, to make big changes in what you do that can have a strong outcome, you need senior buy-in and you need to have the finance and the board. But to actually get some more community engagement, your volunteer days, you know, building up skills, you need HR, you need, you know, the teams who run the sites. And so our strategy is to have, you know, different teams aligned to different outcomes, aligned to different measures. So having a way to bring that all together and report on it. And by aligning it to the UN goals, it's addressing some of the problems that suppliers have. At the moment, we have to take what we do and put it into lots of different forms for different people and different reporting platforms. But I think the more we can unify around sort of standardized metrics and values, it makes it a lot easier and we can be a lot more transparent.
Guy, do you want to come in?
No, I'm just nodding a lot. I mean, it's really quite interesting. So, but I will contribute actually, because I think what you said, Anne, is really important. So we've been doing a lot of work with a company called Countryside Properties. Some of you might know, big developer, and so they had a small sustainability team when we first started working with them 2 years ago now, and they're doing their bit of community stuff. That was great. But then we started talking to them about that for the framework, and they realised exactly as you have, Anne, that yes, they need to involve HR in this, they need to involve not only the site teams, but the corporate teams, the management teams who are making the decisions. And without that governance structure, and without everyone, that cross department involvement, actually it's all kind of a bit sort of like scattergun as opposed to joined up. And the more joined up you are, the more you're going to have an impact. And the only other thing I will mention is that we've found that social value becomes one of those unifying sort of ideas or themes that a lot of people feel good about. And we've just, believe it or not, we've just kicked off in our own team, and we're a team of 50 now. We're asking ourselves, how much more social value can we do? Not through the measurement framework, because that's what we do with our customers, right? But what about us? And so my team, I had a call, so I jumped in on a call just last week and listening in to the young guys who are driving this, and said, isn't it good that we're working with a business that does this sort of stuff? And obviously as a leader that makes me feel good, but actually that's also what it does, because inherent, all of us are part of the community, and we love doing this stuff. And the more you can make it happen and give opportunity, I think the greater value, and it's about unlocking that opportunity, I think.
Great. Now, moving on to the what about social value. What does it mean for your organization kind of in terms of focus? Because you can work on just about anything really, but a lot of the feedback that we get from people is it's important to kind of focus on a certain number of areas. So really, I'd be interested to hear kind of what the priority areas are for the different organizations here. Anne, do you want to go first?
Okay.
Sorry, there's a slight delay, so when I see people nodding.
Patrick, if you want to dive in first, that's fine by me.
Yeah, it's when you work for an organization whose mantra is around building society nationwide, it's actually relatively straightforward, because the whole organizational DNA is about trying to improve the environment we all live and work in. So it is challenging. The only thing I would say, just to build on something Guy said, is it is about doing the right thing, but also it does have, and it can have, a commercial edge to it as well, because we can't ignore that. It has to be able to demonstrate some value, and I have seen it work where we have social enterprise or organizations who demonstrate social value going up against what you might consider organizations who perhaps don't have those values. If they have them, they're superficial, and I've seen there being good commercial outcomes and making the right social decision from an organizational perspective. So I just think that was important to maybe mention.
Okay.
I think to go to the what, I think it's important it goes to what Guy said about his own team looking at what they can do, not just from what they do from a platform. We've got that same split as an organisation. As a service supplier with sustainable services, it's easy to say, well, look, we save, thousands of tons diverted into reuse, but that's what we're enabling our clients to do. Then, so the natural point for us is to look at a lot of environmental data and reporting, because that's what we do, and we've got great figures around it. But as an organisation, it's more the human level, because it's the team that makes that possible. So I think the measurements and the outcomes around staff well-being, community engagement, the training, the apprenticeships, the skills, and actually the quality of the local environment, the engagement local environment, the human side then becomes much more important. So I think we look at both what we do and the team and how we do it, and probably the elements of social value that are prioritised vary in relation in that way, and that's our focuses then have been on what's the most important at any given time for what you're looking at. If you're looking externally, then it's this. If you're looking internally, then this is a different starting point.
Okay, Carly?
I can only speak for 245 Drive, and the drive at 245 was really to become as part of a community in Hammersmith rather than just another office building being built. in town. And sort of going on what Patrick was saying about having a commercial element, there 100% is. And part of something I've noticed recently is occupiers who are looking for space are looking for these types of properties and these types of managing agents and owners who are socially conscious, because in 2020 it is such an important thing to have inclusivity and diversity, and trying to help the environment and trying to help the local community. And for us, a lot of last year, because we didn't have a lot of occupiers, and because it was just, we were brand new really for operations, our drive was to create more jobs in the community. We also managed to put somebody who was part of one of our contacts, Barron's Court, which is a drop-in centre for homeless people. We managed to give him a job, and for like that one person, for me, it was so important, and he's such a lovely man and part of our team now. So yeah, it's about creating contacts for us at the moment, and job generation. That's our primary thought at the moment.
Great, and I'm glad you mentioned diversity and inclusion, because it is really, there's never been a more important time for that right now. And I think there's many organizations that are kind of looking for what they can do specifically in that space. And I'm very pleased to say that the framework has got a series of measures in that particular area that will allow them to do something with that. Now, I'm conscious of time, and we do have got some questions that have come through. But before we go there, I just want to ask what kind of the biggest challenge or barrier has been to driving forward, and how you've overcome that.
I think for us, it's been keeping up momentum with the team, because I think it's quite easy for people to fall back into their 9 to 5, what they know. You know, when you're trying to change mindsets, it's got to become ingrained, and it's got to become the norm. So really, it is educating people to say that this is the norm, this is what we're now doing, let's all think this way.
I think for me, it's a perception of cost. You know, with the last couple of years, we've gone through, we've had a transition of ownership. The ownership before was somewhat, you know, was slightly different, because I was dealing directly with the business owners. Now we've got a parent company, and they really like the cultures and the values they've bought into. And I'm talking to a wider set of brands, and so there's people for whom sustainability is a new element, and there's a natural inclination for some to go to, yeah, but what's it going to cost, or what does it mean cost wise? And I think the challenge is to take the conversation immediately away from cost to value. So, you know, this is a perfect opportunity and tool for that. But I think there's some, when you explain to people that this can be cost saving, it could be income generating, you know, staff and suppliers and customers, you know, there's intangibles you can't even measure about having a strong social value narrative. But when you're faced with someone who just sees it as a cost, then that could be a barrier, because I think it speaks to maybe where their mindset is as a starting point.
Yeah, and so this is labelled as an FM plugin, but actually many of the principles within the TOM are applicable across lots of areas of spend. And if I think across Nationwide, where I work, if we spend, and I don't know the numbers, so if anyone from Nationwide is listening, don't hang me, but if we spend £1 billion a year with third parties, and our FM team spend 50 million of that, the opportunity for doing something even more substantial is enormous, absolutely enormous. And I think that's got to be the challenge.
Yeah, so getting it into the corporate, I'm glad you mentioned that. So getting it into corporate purchasing, just to give you a scale of opportunity, £1 billion, well, our benchmark is normally 20% of additional social value you can unlock if you're embedding social value into procurement. So that means you've got 200 million odd pounds worth of value to create. And so if you're just on the challenges, I think this isn't hard, right? Sorry, okay. This isn't easy. That's what I meant to say. With everyone on the phone, Carly makes it look easy. That's the thing about Carly. It's actually quite hard. and you've got to be creative. And you know, when you start getting into the toms, you'll think, okay, that's quite easy, but actually it does take a bit of determination. But I think it's really important. So the biggest challenge is that first hurdle of just thinking, you know what, I like the idea, but you know, I haven't got time, I can't be bothered with my day job. But actually, once you're over that first hurdle, it's kind of just downhill all the way in terms of opportunity and feedback. And I think that for me is the biggest challenge that's around.
Okay, well, I think there are some excellent questions that have come in that kind of tie into some of the challenges, because how do you ensure the outcomes you are claiming to achieve in a contract are definitely as a result of your initiatives and wouldn't happen anyway, i.e. local employment? That's a brilliant question.
Do you want me to ask that?
Yeah,
well,
go for it.
So I think during procurement, so for instance, we know, and I'll speak with Carly just because we're working together, so that homeless person who's come on board, right? So we know that Carly, as a result of getting the contract with L&G, has employed that homeless person, and that person is working on full-time on that job. And so when you're on procurement, it's a matter of just saying, as a result of the contract, so through procurement, you need to just make it the language very clear, and then you need to make sure that the bidders know they're going to have to provide evidence. So we require Carly to provide evidence. They're doing everything through the portal, but they have to upload evidence on proof. So because I've got Simon Wilkes, who's both our clients, asking me questions about what Carly's doing, and I have to prove that line of sight.
Okay, and I guess the whole point around auditing that and there's a proper measurement tool, that's quite essential as well to make sure that the governance around some of this is complete and that people aren't just claiming things. There's another beautiful question around, are there any simple models for fitting social values, the TOMs, into new tendering and also contract reviews processes? And I'm afraid I think that question is for you as well, Guy.
Well, no, why don't we ask Carly, because she did it. She used our model to do it. I mean, it'd be interesting to hear how easy it was, Carly, for you to take the TOMs and embed it into procurement.
Unfortunately, that part of the tender was before my time, so I wasn't involved in the initial tender. Sorry, Guy.
But in terms of your own supply chain, Carly, you went through the process with your own supply chain, didn't you?
Yes, we did. But that was done centrally before I came on board.
So, yeah.
But I mean, I can talk about the procurement of the terrace, and a lot of that was around. And actually, I was going to touch on what your last question is about, making contacts in the local area. You know, the reason why we actually employed that gentleman was because we actually made a contact because of social value with a homeless shelter. So if I hadn't made that contact and we hadn't got in touch with them and worked with them, we wouldn't have got that gentleman. And again, the same for our tendering process on the terrace. We told it's always about keeping it local and keeping it as within the borough as you possibly can. So as long as your supply chain are aware of the TOMs, which they have got access to, then they can procure things like uniform within the borough. They can do local employment. They can also try and get things like toilet rolls and things like that for your cleaning companies. They need to try and get that within the borough. If they can't get it within the borough, something else that we're doing with Hammersmith Bid, which is our local bid for commercial businesses, is we're using Parcels Against Pollution, which reduces the carbon. So, okay, we couldn't have got that delivered from inside the borough, but we're going to reduce our carbon by using parcels, not pollution.
And so, just on that, Sophie, we've got just a sort of an advertisement for our platform. We have a procurement platform that helps organisations very simply procure for social value. So if you want to use us, get in touch. And it's really simple, and we're working with lots and lots of organisations to do this.
Okay, thank you. Actually, there is another question on procurement, whether a particular procurement approach is more suitable for social value. And we've got some case studies on that as well in the guidance coming up. Does anyone want to talk about procurement models that kind of enables it a little bit easier? Anne?
Well, the only procurement models that I was going to really reference is I've been doing a lot of work on circular economy procurement models. You won't be surprised to hear, Sophie, because one of the things that we've found is that obviously if you're able to procure in a circular fashion, then obviously that generates added value through sustainability and through jobs. And some of the barriers that have historically caused people to not be able to buy circular, either, you know, warranties on products, or sometimes one of the blockers is how something's financed, if it's from a capital procurement budget or an operational budget. There's lots of kind of traditional procurement approaches that need to be challenged to have models that can be more sustainable. But the circular sort of procurement guidance and circular procurement practices, as they're developing and coming on board for certain products and services, they will certainly act as, you know, they will certainly act, in my view, as enablers to achieving more social value, because the kind of areas where people have to change their perception, or maybe, you know, modify how they ask for things traditionally, will have all had to be looked at and reviewed to enable, you know, to have more longevity and sustainability in the procurement.
Great, thank you. There is a question I have to all of you, and that is, what outcomes are you most proud of?
Gosh.
And I'll even answer it myself. Looks like I might need to go first. So yeah. One of the things that I've done over my time over here, we've obviously, as IWFM, people come to us with the problems around the skills issue. And so about 18 months ago, or 2 years ago almost, we started working together with Class of Your Own. And obviously skills is one of those areas that's in the framework as well, about giving opportunity and opening up opportunity to people that might not come into the profession, that might have some barriers. So we've developed a schools workshop that is completely centered around sustainability, where you go into schools and you talk about the role of the FM that really also promotes the sustainable activity that FMs are driving. And that is half me being proud of that, because we've had wonderful volunteers that have worked on that. I could give shout outs. Mark Whitaker has helped to develop that. We've got all the tools for people to go into the classroom. We've got the guidance to do that. We've got presentations to deliver to the school. We've got an entire workshop pack. And I'm really proud of that piece, because we are linking in to communities that might not necessarily consider a route into the profession. It's both a measure that tackles, hopefully in the future when we're allowed to go back into school, the skills gap. And it is obviously one of those social value initiatives that people are talking about. That was my shameless plug.
I'm happy to go next, Sophie. I think, you know, I think the achievements that we've had in our Renew IT service, when I often reflect at how did I end up in waste or in reuse, and I think it's when I was growing up in my house, everything. If I used to go into my dad's garage, I would see everything labelled up, wires, screws, all sorts of bits and pieces, and it's that kind of repair culture was really strong culturally for me. And now I walk into a facility, and those boxes are there, but they say RAMS, memory, and I see this whole facility creating jobs and employment with and training and new skills around one of our biggest, most wasteful resources, which is IT and AV equipment. And particularly now, you know, a couple of years ago, I was speaking to the sustainability manager at JLL, and they supported a homeless charity, and we were trying to work out how to get IT kit to people that are job searching, because IT poverty is a major problem, and that it became a real bug for me to realise people weren't having access to benefits because they couldn't prove job search. So now having the facility to enable maximising the economic value from IT reuse, but being able to facilitate the repair, refurbishment, donation when we've got such IT poverty, but also to see parts and bits being reused. I don't know, I walk in there and it feels very exciting, and I just love seeing so many positives and so many boxes being ticked. So that's probably my favourite.
And I hesitated at the start, Sophie, because I was trying to think of the thing that, because you get involved in so many things, don't you? And I'll share a little story with you, the thing that stands out to me most in recent times, and that's a tie-up at a local school where we gave a young man who had some medical challenges and disadvantages. We gave him an opportunity to work with us 2 hours a day, 2 days a week. Doesn't sound like a lot, and we felt we were doing a nice thing. But what really brought it home was when his mum came in to see us the week after he started, and she was in tears because you suddenly realize, that you're not just impacting and trying to help out one individual. Actually, it has a much broader impact on family, on his circle, and she could see some hope, if you like, that her boy, who she was worried about all of these years, had something independent outside of the family structure and outside of school. And it was just lovely, and it'll live with me for a long time.
I really struggled to pick one thing. I'll be honest, it's been a pretty wonderful year for us because we've worked really hard at it. And so my team is probably the biggest asset I have. And they're the ones that I'm most proud of, because we achieved 119% of our target in our first year. And considering none of them had done it before, no, I had never done it before. The fact that we actually have helped people and given so many jobs locally, and also similar to Patrick, we've actually worked with Action on Disability for students with learning difficulties, and we've given them positions, and they actually said to us, you're one of the first businesses who's actually done what they said they're going to do, and like that just means a lot. And I think it creates a really nice team ethos in the building.
That's great. I'll jump in with two things. So one is we've just launched of course, the FM Toms, which is great, but we just did a big exercise for Wales that was a hell of a thing. So we've launched a set of Toms for Wales, and we started work on that in March and delivered it just 3 weeks ago at a conference that we had 800 people at the conference. And and Welsh Government, everyone, it was amazing, amazing thing. I think the other thing, just to show that, and we were a small business when we did this, we were 20 odd people, is that we teamed up with an organization, Recruiter, that provides opportunities for people furthest from the job market, including people with criminal records. And we took on board someone who's still with us and doing an absolutely fantastic job. And we were kind of 21 people at that point. And so I think just to show that, anyone can do it, even small businesses can do this sort of thing, and I think that's what makes everyone feel good about life.
Well, thank you all. As always, inspiring to hear some of these stories. And I'm kind of afraid we're going to have to leave it here for today because we're already 2 minutes late, but I feel like I could keep on going for at least half an hour longer. So just to wrap up, I just want to remind everyone that the new FM plugin measurement and management framework will be launched on Friday. It will be available to download from our sustainability hub and also the Social Value Portal website. And it can be used either as a standalone tool, or people can complement and use it to complement what they're already doing. Now, the framework has got a series of supporting guidance, which will be published with it. And we're also looking at training opportunities in the future, because sometimes people come up to us and say, this is great, but how can we make sure that we can embed it within organizations? Do you have training? So please get in touch on policy@iwfm.org.uk if you've got any queries around that. And really, as a next phase, the calculator will be developed, and we will also be mapping it, the framework, against the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And lastly, now that we've got the framework, we need to make sure that it stays relevant. So this is a call out to all of in the audience. Please let us have any feedback. And also, we'll need to consult on it in about 12 months' time, just to make sure that we can keep it up to date and fresh. So please look out for that and engage with it. So I've come to my final thank you. to the panel for their time and their thoughts and their ongoing support in getting this to the launch point. And thank you as well to the audience for listening. Now, the recording will be available on our website shortly, along with the framework and the guidance. And please turn in next week when the theme of sustainability will continue, and Peter Brogan, my colleague, Head of Research and Insight, will then tackle sustainability, evolution or revolution. So thank you very much all for today, and this is the end. Until next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.